So today we'll be getting into some stories with Aleister Black, Jon Moxley, and much more. So let's jump right into things with Aleister Black. Aleister Black was stunningly and unexpectedly released by WWE earlier this week. The former NXT champion was just coming off his big return on the closing moments of SmackDown, only to be released by the company days later. Aleister Black didn't make the releases a big deal or hold all the information he had for a podcast or anything like that. He simply hopped on Zelina Vega's Twitch and had a great conversation with fans over there with nearly 10,000 live viewers. He explained how he wasn't angry or upset, just a bit sad. He dismissed the rumors and reports from several months ago that Vince McMahon and WWE weren't high on him. He also talked about the now canceled plans for the Dark Father story and character direction. Aleister Black had this to say during that Twitch live stream. So I could endlessly keep blaming, and the idea for me was that after Buddy Murphy, I would go after Seth Rollins because Seth made Buddy. But then, after Seth, I would find Bray Wyatt because Bray turned Seth into what he was. And afterwards, I kind of wanted to target almost like Vince McMahon. And I kind of wanted to have this reveal where Vince was, the father that I spoke of in the context of he is the creator of World Wrestling Entertainment. So it would make sense that the person eventually doing all this symbolically was Vince. And again, creative loved all of it. It just never came to fruition. I wanted to have continuity with this character continuously blaming everyone else for what happened to him, but himself, and eventually having the realization. So that's what Aleister Black had pictured for his character's direction, and according to the man himself, WWE creative absolutely loved it and was all in. It was a great story he was getting to there, and it proved that he truly has a creative mind. And like he said in his goodbye tweet, he was only allowed to show bits of it. But just going over Aleister Black's story for himself, it seems like he had a lot of storytelling potential. Rollins and Murphy obviously targeted Aleister Black with the same similar eye attack that they pulled off on Rey Mysterio. Aleister Black was even walking around with that eye patch for several months as well, following those attacks from Murphy and Rollins. So it looks like his idea was to focus his attention on Buddy Murphy, make Murphy pay for the eye situation and everything else that he had done. Once he was finished with Murphy, you moved to Murphy's creator, Seth Rollins. Murphy was clearly taking orders and listening to Seth Rollins, so it makes perfect sense to get back at Rollins as well for being who he is and creating Murphy. After he was done with both Murphy and Seth Rollins, he would move on to that next level up, and that was Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt and the Fiend effect has changed a lot of superstars' behaviors and personas. We've seen that a lot over the last few years. Finn, Strowman, Alexa Bliss, and of course, Seth Rollins. The entire Messiah persona for Seth Rollins didn't start happening until he was finished feuding with the Fiend. After the Fiend took the Universal title from Seth Rollins, Seth would eventually turn on the fans and morph into the Messiah character that we saw from late 2019 to 2020. So, what made Seth Rollins go through that drastic change of character? It's more than believable to put the blame on Bray Wyatt and the Fiend. That's why Aleister Black would eventually have that conflict with Bray, because Bray created Seth, who created Murphy, which of course all led up to Aleister getting hurt. So, in Aleister Black's eyes, Bray played a big role and assisted in that attack on him from Seth and Murphy. That really would have been an interesting feud to see play out, Aleister Black versus Bray Wyatt. Both characters have a dark feel to them. They give off this very similar vibe at times. So it really would have been nice to see how they interacted, what that looked like, and how that entire story played out there. It even looked like Aleister was headed down the road of having an alter ego himself. So maybe it could have been something like that of The Fiend versus Aleister Black's alter ego. Then, after finishing with Bray, that would lead to him feuding with the chairman of the board, Vince McMahon himself. Not only that, but Aleister Black said that the big reveal of him talking about this father figure was in reference to Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is like that father figure to WWE. So Vince McMahon was the father that Aleister Black was referring to. So when Aleister Black revealed that information, it makes you wonder if that could have been the plan with this new Dark Father story. Obviously, we'll never get to see that new persona play out anymore. All we can do is speculate and come up with a lot of what ifs and what could have been. Maybe the Tales of the Dark Father was not only talking about his actual father, but maybe it was hinting at Vince McMahon being the Dark Father as well. A little misdirection. Since Aleister Black's character had these issues with WWE and loved to put the blame on others, maybe he was pointing the finger at Vince McMahon for being responsible for everything that was happening to him from all these other superstars, with Vince McMahon eventually being revealed as the ultimate Dark Father. Of course, Aleister Black and Vince McMahon can't have an actual match, but maybe he brings Shane McMahon to fight for him. Maybe something else happens there to continue that story between Aleister and Vince McMahon. But that was Aleister Black's apparent endgame for his direction and story. It's still unbelievable that just a few weeks ago, we were all gearing up for this return, and now he's gone from the company. Still hard to wrap your head around that fact. But we'll see where Aleister Black goes to next. He seems to be up there with Bray Wyatt and others when it comes to being extremely creative. So we'll see what he can make from his creative ideas with the right promotion for him. Almost a decade later, everyone still ranks the Shield's debut and their run together as one of the best in WWE history. We heard this story over 1,000 times by now. CM Punk pitched the idea to WWE. WWE made some tweaks, traded out some members, and eventually brought Punk's vision to life with the Shield. They would have a dominant run as a trio before splitting up and going their separate ways a few years after their debut. They were all successful, even on their own. All 3 Shield members went on to become WWE World Champions. So they had a lot of success on their own and obviously as a part of the Shield. Now, all these years later, there's been a few great NXT call-ups, but nothing even close to the level of the Shield. Jon Moxley recently spoke with Metro and discussed the idea of a new Shield and if it would be possible. He had this to say: anything could work. I mean, it's different because you're a known commodity on NXT now. Whereas when we came in, we were complete nobodies. So there's a benefit to that. On the one hand, nobody knows who you are. But on the other hand, you have a completely fresh slate. You're a complete mystery. You can come right in and start whooping whoever you want. The Shield might be the last big act that came from that old way of doing things before NXT, really. You can do anything with anybody if you commit to them. So Moxley brings up a great point. No one really knew about WWE's NXT talent back then, so it was really easy to make things like that happen. Nowadays, NXT is being broadcasted on television, and everyone already has a name for themselves for the most part. So it's a bit more difficult to pull off. But do you think we'll see another successful faction from NXT on the main roster? They can barely find plans for individuals called up from NXT. And we've seen how NXT factions on the main roster have been handled in recent years, like Retribution, Sanity, and others, so things haven't been looking the best. But do you think we'll see another successful faction like the Shield? Leave your comments, don't forget to subscribe, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.